Greetings, educators. Today we're going to be looking at some specific learning disabilities and the strategies and activities that we can use with these learning disabilities. Our discussion point is going to be focusing on the 5E planning and how we can use that for purposeful planning that will ensure success. We're going to be looking at dyscalculia, dyslexia, dysgraphia, and the characteristics and strategies and some activities that we can use. Let's begin by having a quote here from Benjamin Franklin. By failing to prepare, you are preparing to fail. In light of that, we now focus on the 5 E's. What are these 5 E's? Engage, explore, explain, elaborate, evaluate. And all of this will ensure for purposeful planning. It is important that students work towards an end goal, and that way we can measure and document their performance and their progress. Very important. We are going to show how we can use the 5 E's with a lesson that will help students with dyscalculia. We will also be looking at some of the characteristics of dyscalculia. Now, what are some things they have difficulty with? So they have a challenge estimating things like how long something takes or the height of the ceiling. They also have challenges with money, that's counting and making change, fractions, linking a number 1 to its corresponding word 1. They have visual spatial challenges as well, understanding charts and graphs, and also simply learning basic math like addition, subtraction, and multiplication. In this lesson, we are going to be focusing on the topic length. When we look at teaching students with dyscalculia, it is important that you talk or write out the problem, break the task down into smaller subsets, and most importantly, use real-life examples and manipulatives. Let's get into the 5E lesson planning for teaching length. Specifically, our focus on this would be dyscalculia, and so we look at our objectives. Now, what is it that we want our students to do at the end of the lesson? We want them to be able to use a ruler to measure various objects. We want to know that they can convert millimeters to centimeters. And what are some things you would have already explored with these students? Perhaps the names of instruments used to measure length and the different units for length. Here we have an introductory activity, which is our engage. That is the first E, which is engage. So we have this song that will be played.
Ruler is a tool that's very important. Use it in your class, don't keep it in your bag. Use to measure the length of enough things. A book, a pencil, even a napkin. Take out your ruler, learn to use it. Take out your ruler, learn to use it. Measure the true length, don't estimate it. When you write the figure down, only half the unit. Cause then I get no marks if you never write it. Take out your ruler, learn to use it. Measure the true length, don't estimate it. When you write the figure down, only half the unit. Cause then I get no marks if you never write it. I hope you have your ruler today. Can I tell you where I use it from yesterday? Hope you have your ruler today. Can I tell you where I use it from yesterday? Hold up the ruler if you know to use it. Hold up the ruler if you know to use it.
One of the most important things to do is to utilize something interesting and attention grabber for our students. Now, culturally, we are a people of music and dance, and so we can bring that to the classroom, make it something that our students can relate to, that they enjoy. And music is something that's very, very useful and impactful in the classroom. And so we start our engagement activity with a dub poem, which is what we just listened to. So it's telling them that, listen, you were told to bring your ruler yesterday, make sure you have it today. The ruler can be used to measure so many things. So that's what this engagement activity is about. Showing them that they can use a ruler to do several things, to measure several things. Once we complete that engagement activity, we want to keep that momentum. So again, we explore some things further relating to measurement and the ruler. Here we can talk about track and field. So that is something again that we hold dear to our hearts in our Jamaican culture. They can relate to track and field. Many of our boys and sometimes our girls too will relate to our track stars, and they look up to them as their role models. So we can use some things that are relevant to them in the classroom. So we look at the diagram of a running track. You can post this on the board. If you're face to face, you can actually have a chart. You can project it on the board using the projector, or you can use a computer screen if it is that you are doing it online. Most importantly, if you can take students to an actual track, that is also something very, very useful for students with dyscalculia. After you engage them in that conversation about track and field and using those examples, then you can ask them to name one of Jamaica's best sprinter, right? And the events he or she would have participated in. And of course, let them know that you're focusing on a 100-meter event. So you can zone in on different things that you are going to be using the ruler to explain. After you do that, now you show them the key focus question of this lesson. So you want them to be able to use the ruler. How can measurement help you to justify? Because you're teaching them more than just academics here. You're teaching them skills and ways how to effectively put an argument and communicate. So this is the statement. Persons in the United States are saying that Usain did not cover 100 meters in 9.58 seconds. He only covered 70. How could you prove that he actually ran 100 meters and not 70 meters? So we look at the applicability of measurement here in track and field. What do we have our students do then? So we then take that discussion and show them that the ruler, the tape measure, these are instruments that can be used to measure length. You ask them to observe instruments that are used to measure length. So you will have these manipulatives or pictures of these instruments in the classroom, or the actual instruments in the classroom. You can then ask them the questions that follow. Which of the instruments would they use to measure the book, the bed, the class corridor? And you ask them to explain why. Again, you want to integrate the 4 C's in your lessons too. So which instrument would you use and why? They give you their responses here. Then you have to remember that students with dyscalculia will need constant revision. So you might have taught these topics in relation to measurement previously, but you want to bring it into the present lesson and you want to make it relevant. So you ask them, what does the M mean in 100 meters, right? You want them to be able to communicate that and understand that, right? And then you ask them again, what are some other units that we could use when measuring length? Having done that, now you give them the opportunity to practice. In practicing, you can instruct them now to take out their ruler, observe it. What is it that you see on this ruler? What can you tell me about this ruler? And then in doing that, now you allow them to communicate a part of the 4 C's that we need to establish in the classroom. You ask them to share what they have observed about the ruler. After they share what they observe about the ruler, you can then have your own chart with the ruler. You can also have a digital ruler that is shown on the screen depending on your mode of delivery, whether it's face-to-face or online. Either way, it can be effective in both circumstances. Once they have the actual things around them, they are better able to retain the information. So you want to know that you have this ruler to use as demonstration. What are the goals and objectives of posting up this ruler? What do you want them to do? So you want to ask them what the long strokes represent on the ruler, and then what the short strokes represent, right? And then of course you want them to be able to identify how many millimeters are present in 1 centimeter, and so they can keep doing this. So you are demonstrating it, they're doing it in the class together, and so they're able to understand what conversion is, what it means, to move from a smaller unit to a larger unit. Having done that, you elaborate even further. And then again, to practice the 4 C's in the classroom, you allow them to work collaboratively. So they're going to be estimating and measuring. And remember that when you group students, you can group them based on their ability. So not all students are going to be the best at something. So you group them based on their ability, which helps them to foster positive relationships and refer to accountability. So here's the activity that they'll do in groups. Each student will observe the book. They're working together, but they each have to observe the book independently. They record their estimate. What is it that they believe that the length of the book to be? That is the individual accountability. So each member in the group has to participate. And then, of course, the positive interdependence is that they can share and work with each other. When they record their response, they fold the paper and each student will hide their response now and pass that on, right? And you demonstrate what that would look like in the classroom. So this is like a round robin. If it were, let's say, virtual, you could use breakout rooms and Google Docs or something that's collaborative like a Padlet that they can work together on. You can look at communication skills now, where each group member will discuss and analyze each of the estimate that the members would have written on the paper. Choose the best one. You would have observed your ruler and looked at the measurements on your ruler. How long do you think this book is? What's the length do you think this book could be? And so they are now able to critically analyze and then communicate. When they do that now, you give them the opportunity to test and prove if their estimate was close enough to the real thing. So they can actually use the ruler now to measure the book and see how close they were to the actual measurement. So that's practice. Then you give them independent practice. Good, you give them that independent practice. And this is still under elaborating. So you can give them a worksheet, or you can have them use real objects and measure the length of these objects. So you have students who may prefer to use the worksheet and use their ruler to measure the objects on the worksheet, or you may have those kinesthetic learners who are not necessarily having a challenge with math, but they prefer to measure the actual object. That is also a possibility. You can have them measure the object similar to what is on the worksheet, and so they record their values on the worksheet. Once you do this now, you want to make sure that the targets that you would have set out for the lesson is achieved. You have to evaluate. All right, and in evaluating this, students will complete what we call a stoplight evaluation. And this is what the stoplight evaluation looks like. So the students will decide if they don't get the concept, they need help understanding it. Do they understand it but still need support, or they can do it on their own? Having this level of evaluation, it helps students to become aware and identify their strengths and weaknesses, right? And it provides data for the teacher to be able to use that will provide useful feedback for students, as well as for the teacher to adjust where necessary. So this is a worksheet that will allow students to measure the length of different lines that they are given here, and they can also use the idea of millimeters and centimeters and convert those things. Good. And this will determine if they really understand the concept. Good. And with students with dyscalculia, they tend to have difficulty identifying the word six and the numeral six. They find difficulty seeing the relationship there. And so you notice both the word and the number six is written on the worksheet. The word two and the number two is written, so they see the relationship, and you give them the practice so it becomes a part of them. And that's the dyscalculia example of a lesson teaching length. Here we look at dyslexia. So dyslexia has to do with various challenges when it comes down to language, right? And this in particular, we're looking at phonological awareness, the challenge with phonological awareness. So this is an activity that was designed by me to, focus on how you can help students to learn syllables. And of course, you have to break these things down into steps. So this syllables activity was really geared towards building the phonological awareness in the student by showing them how words can be broken down in different parts. And they tend to have challenge with multisyllabic words. So what it does, it improves that area of weakness and remove that fear and that anxiety. So you want to be able to use real manipulatives. You can use a toy banana or a real banana, and of course they can have the banana when they cut it afterwards. So you want to use these tangible things, these manipulatives, and each syllable would be one piece of the banana. And so you have them do this. They can use the worksheet or they can use the manipulatives. Good. So you want them to be able to identify the steps. Look at the word, break it apart into syllables, write each syllable in a different box, and each of the box will represent a part of the banana. So you practice doing this and reading out the words aloud, and then you read them, to the teacher. Right? So these are some activities that you can use to help build confidence and help students with dyslexia as it relates to phonological awareness. When we look at dysgraphia, they struggle to write clearly, and because of this they have an issue with spelling. Spelling is a major area of weakness for students with dysgraphia. So here we have a maze activity. Again, this one was also designed by me. The maze speller activity is geared towards reducing frustration of writing and forming letters. So what this activity does, it gives them the opportunity to spell the words with very little frustration. So they can use the maze to help them spell the word, but they don't have to worry about writing because it is so frustrating for them, and then it reduces their confidence and defeats the purpose of learning. So you want to be able to make learning fun and effective and use things that they are able to relate to. So the maze will help them to spell the word, so they're still spelling, they're not losing out on any academic opportunities, but you reduce the frustration, which leads to low self-esteem and lack of confidence in themselves, and you don't want that for any child. So you want to make sure you use activities that will boost their confidence and help them to improve and perform at a level that is acceptable. Right? So these are some of the ways we can reach our students and help to plan for them in the classroom. Again, if you don't plan for them effectively, then you won't be able to see the success that they can actually bring forth. Now, it's important that our lessons are authentic, applicable to real life examples, relevant, and it enrich the students. What value would you have added to the students despite their challenges? So let's not look at their disability, but their ability to perform by being thought of, and of course with proper careful planning that we know is designed for success. No student should be left behind. Yes, it takes time, but as educators, we have to do our part so each child can feel like they are a part of our class. Inclusive education, planning, or instruction that will facilitate various learning styles and challenges. If you have any questions whatsoever and you want to connect with me, you can certainly email me at carebeyondreachacademics@gmail.com or rochelle.professionaltraining@gmail.com, rochelle.educator.harris@gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram at Care Beyond Reach Academy, YouTube at Care Beyond Reach Academy, on LinkedIn, Rochelle Harris, and on Instagram for myself, you have Rochelle_R.R_Harris. Do have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you so much for having me.